Oh, hey there.
How is everybody doing? Hey, RJ, do you have a name you prefer other than RJ?
No, no, RJ's what everybody calls me. That's my
Okay,
name. So
and of course
that,
the famous and infamous Jody Lynn Nye. Oh my
I
goodness,
like
I'm
it.
so thrilled everybody's here.
Yeah.
Well, we are, and I got three screens this time. Last time it was like
Cool.
anytime anybody talked, they would appear on the screen. So I'm so inconfident when it comes to computers. It's amazing that I don't use a Underwood to write books with. So you're
Oh,
over in England, right?
no, Tom Hanks is still doing that.
Oh my God! Oh man! I've this keyboard that I use to write. Most of the letters have rubbed off. I'm lucky I actually have done this long, and my wife keeps going, Brian, you need to get a new keyboard. I'm like, yeah, but you know how hard it is to get used to a new keyboard. I
You
would
can
have
buy stickers with letters on them.
yeah, like people like some people try to learn the piano that way. Actually, I know it pretty good. I mean, I don't really have any trouble anymore. I mean, my God. Oh, so you're over in England, right, RJ?
Yeah, it's about 8 o'clock here, so
Oh,
it's quite late for
Hmm.
me. I'm generally
Still nice and sunny.
yeah. It, it's the first day it's not been raining. Second day it's not been raining for about 3 months. So
It's been rainy as anything here too. I can't believe it. We moved to Georgia, and it rains so much and so hard. I just can't believe it. The
God,
sky just sort of zips open and the heavens fall out.
it's not like that here. It's just like a kind of depressing grey wetness in the air. It's just, it never stops. You're always kind of damp, but not really wet, and it's just
Mizzling.
infuriating. Yeah.
otherwise known as England.
Mm, pretty much.
Oh well, I mean, I'm all the way down in the southernmost part of Alabama, and
Wow.
well, I mean, the thing is, I live in a town called Fairhope, Alabama, which is like, what if San Francisco had a love child with Mayberry? And
That's that's an amazing combination.
we got this beautiful local bookstore. I mean, it's just picturesque little town. A lot of retirees. It's right on Mobile Bay.
Hmm.
I actually live walking distance from the bay. There's this little landing that I take walks. Now that I'm like physical, I had some physical issues. I
Yeah,
had
I
yeah.
remember. I hope you are better.
Oh yeah, I'm finally healing. I'm finally able to start thinking about getting back to work. I mean, just being able to sit at my desk is, I mean, that's. I don't know if you've ever been immobile where you really just couldn't sit and work. And at one point, I was hopped up on so many pain pills that even when I could sit, I couldn't think. So like, nothing I wrote made any sense.
That's all my first drafts, though. None of them make any sense. And I read them back and just go, what was I saying? But
Yeah.
it somehow works out at the end.
Well, they say like Pink Floyd like wrote all those songs when they were stoned, and I'm like,
It
I
shows.
don't really do anything like that anymore. But once in a while, if I have insomnia or something like, that's about the extent of my drug usage. But I've tried to write like that, and it's like I don't see how people are creative, that kind of creative, when they're like just doing mind altering substances.
I wrote
I
like
think
the
the
first novel in 6 weeks on a course of steroids. I just barely slept and
oh
just
boy.
wrote. And I don't think the actual that version made much sense. Took a lot longer to make it work.
Sort of disappointed Michael hasn't shown up yet.
Sure, it will.
Yeah, either that or it slipped his mind because or he's got the time wrong. Because it comes in as 1:30, but it's 2:30. His time. He's over in Virginia. But
Well,
so
I'm in the same time zone he is, and I only just made it in the nick of time. We had, as I said, we had a guest turn up unexpectedly.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, y'all got dinner tonight. See, I'm pretending I'm at the pub the whole, at the after the.
I see.
Yes. Kind of like Pensacon. My inauspicious meeting with Ms. Nye here was. I'm sitting there recording everything. She's having a private conversation. I have no idea what it was about, and I'm recording people's private stuff, completely oblivious to the fact that I'm doing this. So I ended up deleting everything. They're like, were you recording all that?
For
I'm like,
future reference, mute it.
yeah. Well, I mean, it just didn't even occur to me. I was pretty excited. I'd done cons before, but it was usually me renting a table as an indie. When you're an indie, that you know. And I was pretty excited, and Jim Butcher was going to be there. I knew Kevin from before a little bit, not hanging out, but I talked to him online, and I'd met him once at the previous Pensacon. So I was pretty excited to be there, and right now I'm excited to be anywhere.
It's good to be anywhere.
Oh my God, this is just.
You've not had lockdown quite the same as we have you? Like we had 3 months of you couldn't leave your house, you had to stay in completely.
Well, we had quite a bit of that where they only allowed you to go out for vital necessities like picking up groceries and so on.
Yeah.
All the restaurants were closed. All of the public buildings were closed. In fact, our library has only just now opened up again for very safe, socially distant browsing of the shelves. But before that, before the first, it was still shut. You could borrow things, and they would have them at a table for you to pick up. But that was only in the last couple of weeks. Honestly, they tried, and I think that everybody has just become so weary of it that quite a lot of people are just thinking to hell with it, and are going about their business, and it's just been catastrophic.
It's weird how my little boy is 10, and he has just altered his behaviour. He just understands it. He alters his behaviour. He'll tell us off. He'll just be like, "Daddy, 2 meters, stay apart," and he'll tell other people off, and they listen to him because he's a kid. So, and that works really well. But I think for adults, it's a lot harder to keep that in your head because you're so used to just sort of talking to people.
Oh, it's like children who tell you that you should recycle, and their parents get embarrassed because they aren't recycling, and the kids tell them off.
Yeah.
Well,
I like that.
My son's going to be a senior this year in high school, and
that's rough.
This is rough on him. We haven't been able to do anything this summer. He's coming up on his senior year. The thing is, one thing you need to understand about Alabama football, American football, is like more important than religion to some people. So guess what? They've been practicing. So
Of course they have.
Well, I mean, look, I actually distanced myself from my son, and because we live in a large enough house where that's easy to do, and it is, and we can be safe, I mean, and especially now that they're saying that the surfaces, like touching surfaces, isn't, as long as you're keeping your hands clean, that you're not likely to get it that way, that it's going to be. So, but we live in a large enough house, and he spends most of his time in the basement, so distancing even at home isn't that difficult,
That really doesn't sound very different from any high school senior in any other era.
Yeah, social distance from your teenager. Terrible. Okay, it's like when we're doing what we do, social distancing. You mean living my normal life?
How old is a senior? Because we don't have the same.
He'll be 18 in March.
All right.
So,
proper grade then.
12th grade. I know y'all have a weird thing. Y'all have like college and university are two different things in England, right?
Sort of, yes. College is less
more vocational, right?
expected. Yeah, so you can do the same things, and then we have sixth form as well, which is not quite school and not quite college. But doctors have to go to university, and you could probably go and do hairdressing at college, so you can do hairdressing at university as well.
My friend's son graduated from Plymouth Polytech, and It was quite a revelation for him going away to school. So
That's where is that Plymouth, America, or Plymouth, UK?
no, Plymouth in the UK.
Oh, that's where my wife did her graphic design degree.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was in
See
is
something.
in computer sciences as well.
Good evening. How many people we got watching? We got a couple people watching.
Good.
Hello, people watching.
Hello, people watching.
Well, I kind of like the whole concept of what we're doing here is I got the idea when we were when I was watching a Led Zeppelin video, and part of the video was them standing around chatting, and it got me to thinking, well, wouldn't it be cool to listen to what they were talking about? And I thought about, wouldn't it be cool to be at that pub in England and listen to what those guys where J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and all those. I forget what the name of the bar is. Wouldn't it be cool to be? And not necessarily about books, but what interests them. What was
arguing about religion. I think that's what they did a lot.
Yeah. I pray to the all powerful atheismo that we don't talk about religion. No, you talk about whatever you want.
The way things are going. In my experience, most writers get together and we don't talk about writing and beautiful words and things. We complain about taxes and our families and publishers and all of the other things that are just sort of around us.
Well, you were thinking about doing some self-publishing, weren't you, Jody?
I had a couple of books that were collections of my short stories that I put together for story bundles. Mm-hmm. And since they were already in existence, had covers and were formatted and everything, I thought, why not go ahead and make them into books? So Alexi was taking the lead on a few of those, and I'm going to turn one of them over to Eric Flint at Ring of Fire Press, because and why not?
Yeah, hey, you know what?
I don't necessarily want to be a publisher. I want somebody else to take.
I was self-published for 9 years, and I still got self-published stuff. And I tell you what, there's a lot of crap out there, and a lot that gives it the stigma. And there's a lot of people that game the system and like dude things like book stuffing and content mills and stuff like that. But there's some great writers that are in self-publishing that made the transition over to traditional. I mean, there's a lot of talent there who and tell you what, every self-published author out there should have a little statue to Jeff Bezos, because if it wasn't for him, if it wasn't for KDP, being able to having that kind of platform, that kind of exposure, I wouldn't have had a career without it.
I'm always impressed by self-publishers, because I wouldn't be able to do it. I'm not. My mind doesn't work in that kind of. You need a business side of your head to do it, and I just don't have that. Which is why I was always going to be a traditional publisher. There was no choice for me except I'd release books, but just die.
You hit a home run out of the gate, man. Your book's done real well.
Assume so. I don't know. I don't ask or want to know. I write books. And I let when I signed with my agent, he said, "What do you want from me?" And I said, "I want to be the author you would choose to embezzle first," because I'm just not interested in the business. Every so often he'll sort of just get in touch with some good news, and that's it. That's all I want. I just want to be left alone. I'm not interested in that. Just every so often get some money, which is lovely, and apart from that, I write, and that's all I really want to do.
Well, I had the good fortune of having my first traditionally published book come out right when the pandemic hit.
Ow! That's not as bad as it sounds, because a lot more people are buying books, apparently. According to my agent, said there's a lot of...
With what money?
Yeah.
I mean, the bookstore. The thing with the traditional stuff is the bookstores are closed. Yeah, they can buy them on Amazon, but all these people who've ordered books, a couple of them opened up for a little while, and I'm not completely unknown in the traditional world. So this was my, and I had all this stuff lined up with the Barge Tower, and I was thinking, we were doing a bunch of cities, going all these places. I was going to be able to, get a lot of books out. I was going to go to bookstores while I was in each town. None of that
If you
happened.
think you're frustrated, how do you think Alexi feels?
Oh God, I've spoken to Alexi a couple times. I mean, I couldn't even imagine. I mean, he's got a man. That's his business. You know, that's.
Mhm.
I made suggestions. Hey, why don't you get the states that opened up? We'll all go get in a van and go to the bookstores and do events. You know, I mean, get everybody a COVID test.
People are not coming out. If
Yeah.
anything opened up that people would go to, it appears to be beaches and bars, and that has been disastrous.
Well, guess where I'm going to be dragging some books when you know. I mean, I planned on getting on my motorcycle and going all through Florida. Then Florida flared up, like and then everywhere I've planned to go, it's just been all of a sudden there's this. I mean, my little town, we're actually doing pretty good. We got like 2,800 cases in Baldwin County and a population of about 150,000 people, in the county, which isn't bad. Um, but we're like hurricane preppers, so I mean, when we knew how to shut down. We weren't we like my little town didn't wait for the state or federal government to give any guidelines. We just did it. I mean, the restaurants were closed before anybody said anything because we knew what to do. Because we live on the Gulf Coast, we're used to having to go. We're used to having to fend for ourselves because nobody, nobody comes and helps us any damn way.
A good thing about the whole lockdown and coronavirus was no one at my publisher cared when I wildly missed my deadline for the third Bone Ships book. So that was quite good. They were just like, oh, it don't matter. Everything's going to be slowed down. Well, brilliant. I'll take a couple of months longer.
I got this little gem coming out in a week.
Wow.
Oh, that's nice. Nice cover.
Lovely cover.
Yeah, yeah. You know who did that? Felix Ortiz did that. He works with. Y'all know who Rob Hayes is?
Yeah, and he did Anna Smith Sparks covers
Yeah,
as well, didn't he?
Felix does all the Rob Hayes's covers.
Yeah.
He actually did some fan art. How he got noticed? He did some fan art for Nicholas Eames, the Kings of the Wild series, and my editor was over at Orbit at the time and saw his work and fast forward
Who's
a
your
couple
editor?
of years. Lindsay Hall.
Oh, I know Lindsay. She's brilliant.
Yeah,
She-
she's awesome.
she
She looks like
bought
she's
Age
about
of-
12
yeah.
years old too, man.
Lindsay and Jenny together bought Age of Assassins. So she was my editor when I started at Orbit.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I love her.
She came over with Debbie Pillai. I think that's how you pronounce her name.
Yeah,
Debbie.
I don't think I've met her, but I've met Lindsay. We met at Worldcon last, the Irish one as well. So she wasn't with Orbit anymore, but we just went to meet. She's lovely.
I met her over in San something or another at the Worldcon there. It was like it was. Yeah, she looks like she's about like 12 years old, and I'm like, holy shit, And she's a senior
Really
editor.
good. Really
I mean,
good.
she's not. She's like 30, but I mean, I swear to God, if you ever see a picture of her, Jody, I hate her because of the. Of just like, where did you get this thing where you look so young and I look so old? Oh my God.
They're so sharp.
Maybe you are
Jenny.
in her attic.
Yeah, actually, she's a really good editor, and I mean, she's easy to work with. I mean, I was, I mean, coming out of India, I was so scared going over to the traditional world, especially Tor. Tor's such a big, big deal. And I mean, when I was growing up, you had Ballantine books, you had Tor, and you had Del Rey. Those were the main publishers that put out fantasy when I was coming up, like in the '80s, reading Piers Anthony, and when Terry Brooks first broke with Magic Kingdom for Sale, and so I mean, I remember those were the publishers I remember growing up because you'd look on the side and you'd see it, and Tor was a cool sounding name, easy to remember. And now, I mean, now I'm with them, and I'm like, but I'm coming out of 9 years of indie where I basically don't have to listen to nobody. You know what I mean? And then,
Well, you know all the pitfalls of self-promotion, and a lot of people who come out of legacy publishing are suddenly getting out all of it dumped in their laps, and they're saying, what am I supposed to do? But indie authors have been doing this all along. So you know where to go to say, look, I've got this book out.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a really strange thing to have to let go of your ego, and I mean, because when you're writing your own, and you're publishing yourself, and you do have final say, yeah, you can use some beta readers and all that, but push comes to shove, you can just simply ignore it. And when you're working with an editor whose career is tied to your success and failure in a very real way, I mean, not to say one book would make or break an editor, but the more successes an editor has, the better, better that editor's career. And
on the other hand, you should be listening to the editor because they have read thousands of books.
Mm-hmm.
And they have seen terrible things go by. They don't want you to make the same mistake as many of the people that they have rejected. And yes, it's a dialogue. It's always been a dialogue. You say to them, here's a problem. The editor says, I found this problem. This is something that you could do to solve it. And you could say, no, I'm not going to do that. And you can go home and kick the walls. And then you start to think about it and realize, yeah, there's a problem, but I don't want to solve it their way. I'll solve it my way. But nevertheless, the problem is still taken care of.
And, when Blood of Assassins, the red one, when I sent the first version to my editor, Jenny, she wrote back on one of the first things she said was I'd written a prologue, and she said, it has to go. It's not right. It shouldn't be there. She was kinder about it than that, but that was what she said. And I'd set up this kind of repeating motif based on this prologue, and it ran throughout the entire book. And I just thought, I can't, no. And I wrote her a 5-page email explaining all the reasons why this prologue was perfect and it had to say. And I got to the end of it and just thought, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I was actually calling my editor. I was actually calling my editor name, not to her face, but I'm reading the notes, I'm going, what the hell do you mean that? I never, and by the end of it, I'm like, she's right.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they did some stuff to my book. They committed genocide on a whole race of people. It wasn't, my book's right now all humans. It wasn't originally all humans. There was a race of Sylvan and a race of humans. The Sylvans don't exist anymore. I was sitting there going, all right, they go, traditional wisdom in indies, you always start out with a bang. Action scene. You catch their interest, and the pace in indie is a lot faster. So I'm like,
well, you need a narrative book of some kind. It doesn't have to be an action scene, but it does have to be something that
not necessarily physical action, but some sort of suspense or drama or action or something that like catches you right away. And I had that, and they go, well, we kind of want to do a little character development first. I'm like, okay, and then they describe she describes what they were wanting, and I was like, so you basically want a long expected party? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I can do that. You know what I mean? I've read Tolkien. I know. I mean, I'm not going to write like Tolkien, but I can set those kind of scenes, no problem. And at the end of it, I'm like, well, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? There's no. Turned out it made all the difference in the world. It was great. It was a great way to introduce the characters. A lot of the stuff I wanted to do was pointless to the story, and she was right. And it was like me surrendering my ego. That was the hard part, man.
I think that having someone that pushes you to think in different ways is really, really helpful. Like when I pitched the Bone Ships, the only thing Jenny said was no cannons, because originally they had cannons, and she went, cannons is too near to history, think of something else. And I really wanted cannons, and cannons had always, because I love naval fiction, I absolutely love that, I wanted cannons. So I sought for a bit, as you have to, and then I came up with these huge crossbows that they use, and it makes much more sense in the world, and the book is better because of it, and it's become a big thing in the book, and I'm really glad she did that. And genuinely, everything she does, I'm always really glad that she pushed me on it. But she does have 3 levels. So,
Yeah, it makes it unique to you, but also
yeah.
if it doesn't fit in the way that your world has evolved in an industrial fashion, then it sticks out and it's not good for your storytelling. So I think that's a brilliant solution.
But it's just three levels of just kind of a thought. And she says you could, and that means it's something that's just occurred to her as she was going through, and I can ignore it if I want to. And she's got a thought, which means she'd really quite like me to change something, but she won't fight me on it. And then we think, and if she says we think, it's going, and nothing I say will change that. That's kind of all right. Okay, I'll accept that one. And I love that. There's a little coded conversation going on in the notes of what I can get away with.
Oh man, I tell you, you ever notice stuff since you now that you know you're as a storyteller and you when you see things in stories you're like okay that doesn't make sense that you I find myself becoming overly critical. You know, I was watching okay The Witcher, the TV series. Not I haven't read the books. The TV series. What you said about cannonballs reminded me of this. He goes, "Hey, looks like a little cannonball." He picks up this little round rock, and I'm like, "They're fighting with swords. They're fighting with you know. I haven't seen a gun, let alone a cannonball. You know."
They blew it.
Oh my god! Oh my! I got this whole background thing. I got a green screen. What do you think?
Just say there's people in your house that are very quiet. It's good.
Well, everybody left, so I'm all good to go.
No, I mean, the people having a party that's remarkable.
If you hear any dice rolling behind me, my husband has a friend over and they're playing a board game.
Oh
So
my! How long have you been married?
33 years.
You know what? You know what I love? I had this rush of excitement, then just a little bit of disappointment when I was talking to Jody at Pensacon, and I found out her husband's name was Bill. I'm like, are you really married to Bill Nye?
I know that happens a lot, but sometimes women have their own names.
Yes, I mean, yes. What are the odds there's two Bill Nyes? Pretty damn good, but you know, still, you know, I mean,
I'd like to meet him. But he and my husband could not look more unalike.
now we were saying about like you know, creative differences and with you know editors. What about when you were working with Anne McCaffrey? Did you ever struggle that way?
Uh, a little bit, but mostly when I was working on a project with her, she was the boss. So if she said, I don't like this, it went. But if she said, I like your idea better than I like my idea, so we'll use yours, which was incredibly generous of her. She didn't have to, but she did. And because she was so generous, it was easy to work with her. I didn't always feel as if I were imposing, and I was always going to have to yield. She made it very easy. She was
How
terrific to
how old were
absolutely.
you when you first started working with her?
What's that?
How old were you when you first started doing all that? You were 29. Oh man, that must have been intimidating as all hell.
It was absolutely.
I can imagine, you know, I mean, be like me going up and all of a sudden Brandon Sanderson wants to do a book with me. I'm like, you know,
No, working it with Anne was a genuine pleasure. She was encouraging. She gave me lots of lessons in many things as we were working together. But if she didn't think that I had talent and the willingness to learn, she would not have worked with me. She was particular about her co-authors, and there are only a few of us really. There's well, they're more than fit on one hand, but there are not many more than that.
oh, I wanted to say my condolences. I know you lost a friend recently.
Yes, about a week ago, my friend Susan Sizemore, a brilliant writer, two times New York Times bestseller, and she had gone actually from being a legacy publisher for HarperCollins to full indie. So I was actually going to bring her up, but she was a very dear friend. We had known each other such a long time and traveled together had lots of jokes together. I was there when her mom passed away, and it's just so tough. Her roommate was her very closest companion, and it's so hard on her.
Yeah.
So we all have a loss. But I've been getting such wonderful notes from people about how much they loved her work, and I only wish that she could have heard that.
Well,
She would really have appreciated the fact that people thought of her with great pleasure.
well,
I thought her stuff was really well done. I found it hard to read traditional romances, but then again, so did she. She wrote vampire romances, time travel romances, and
I've heard of her. I don't know if I may or may not have read her stuff. When I was a kid, I would basically the drugstore across the street was my bookstore, and I mean back in those days, the little drugstores would have a pretty nice, decent little book section.
oh
You know, you'd
yes,
have magazines, you'd have books, you'd have comics, and that's where I got all my comics and my sci-fi fantasy.
for a
And
long time, my first bookstore were those spinner racks in drugstores on the corner.
yeah,
Comic books were there,
I just grab
paperback
anything.
novels.
Well, they had like 4 rows with like Western, sci-fi, romance, the whole nine. And because it's a small town, and these little stores like there's a thing called TG&Y, and that was the K&B drugstore, and I go in there and I would just basically read everything that they had in pulp, whatever was in mass market. And I've read books by authors that I didn't know that I'd read them until somebody mentioned the book. I didn't realize that Magic Kingdom for Sale was Terry Brooks' first book, because I remember that's where I bought that book, was from the K&B drugstore. And I mean, but I was actually in the middle of an interview years ago talking about Ender's Game. They were talking about Ender's Game, and I was like, "No, I haven't read Ender's Game." About halfway through the conversation, I realized I've read Ender's Game. I just didn't. I mean, because I didn't pay attention to who the author was. I was like, 12, 13, 14 years old. In that area, I'm just picking up whatever cool cover there was that sounded like it was fun to read. So, yeah.
Funny how shadows have changed over the years, though. They used to be so unsophisticated. There would be a shadowy figure standing out against a very Art Deco style landscape, and it would be in perhaps 3 colors.
Yes,
That
yes.
was that was, that was
Or
it.
you'd have the Conan cover with Conan standing there and this half-naked woman wrapped around his leg, and people wondered why a lot of women weren't into fantasy in those days. Can't imagine why.
When I started writing professionally, Esther Friesner, who is a wonderful colleague of mine, gave me a badge that had 3 Greek letters on it. They were new sci-fi, because we were going to change the way that science fiction was being published. Yes, we were no longer going to wrap ourselves around the legs of warriors. We were going to go out there and kick the aliens' butts ourselves. And we were going to solve the problem of the science that needed to be solved.
I mean, but people give '80s sci-fi bad rap though, but they forget that was when the foundation. I mean, when Asimov was very active, and Anne McCaffrey was very active. Terry Brooks was coming. There was some
And,
great
uh,
writers that came
and,
out of the '80s. I mean,
and Catherine Kurtz and Andre Norton and C.L. Moore, a lot of people like that led the way for us.
hmm
But the great preponderance of female writers came along about the time that actually, I would say 5 years before I started.
Well, I was saying something on the last show I did with Michael Manning and Kel Cade and A.G. Riddle, that one thing I love about the fantasy genre, modern fantasy genre, is that you have a lot of great new types of fantasy set, not necessarily in medieval Europe. You got Asian fantasy, African fantasy, and all these different. And you have written by a diverse group of people. You got LGBTQ fantasy, you got all this stuff. But what's great is it's not, you don't see it like you don't have this attitude like it's replacing Tolkien. It's just in addition to Tolkien, we have this. You know what I mean? It's which is what I've always loved about, literature in general. I mean, long as it's not, because it's not overtly political and people aren't usually trying to make some sort of weird point. But I mean, it's that everything that keeps on coming out in fantasy, especially in the past, say, 10 years, has been just in addition to and adding to the tapestry of what fantasy is.
Oh, absolutely. And the problem, I think, quite rightly, was there were not enough slots made for diverse fiction. That there was a great deal of cardboard cutouts doing heroic things, but they all seemed to be white men. And I'm not trying. I am.
Well, they were being written by white men. What do you expect?
I expected better. This is where Ursula K. Le Guin was a true pioneer. She was one of them who said, "No, it doesn't have to be like that. Let me show you how I could do it better." But to give credit to the traditional writers, quite a lot of them had diverse heroes. It's just that those may be not well enough known. And now you have an explosion of wonderful things that are coming out. Say Nnedi Okorafor's Lagoon, which is set in Lagos, Nigeria. Aliens land there. That's a wonderful story.
Paddy Thompson's books are just superb. Absolutely love his Wormwood books, just wonderful.
Well, I just don't see why all aliens don't land on the White House lawn. What the hell?
Or London.
And, a few years ago, I picked up a collection that was at the Nebulas called "The Sea Is Ours," except it was SEA. It was steampunk stories, but written in set in Southeast Asia. SEA for Southeast Asia.
Neat.
And without the colonization aspect of quite a lot of the Victorian era trope, that people can come up with steampunk types of things without having to have been Victorian.
Well, all aliens may land on the White House, but according to Doctor Who, all time issues are in London and Cardiff.
I wrote a working class steampunk short story, but no one would buy that. But I love it. It's kind of the other side, because in steampunk you always have this sort of aristocrat adventurer, and I hate them. So I wrote the people who were in the factories making these machines and the filth and the way that they were exploited. But that wasn't particularly what people wanted to read, I think. But I love it. One day I'll get it out now.
Oh, I'm glad to see things changing though for the better. One of the things like I said, I mentioned this in the last show, but it bears repeating. Okay, you see a lot of controversy in the comics and in movies, and with say. Just to pull an example out of the air, the all-female cast of Ghostbusters, right? And everybody, you have this group of people who hated it, group of people who wanted to see, and it just made everybody want to pick teams. And you see the same thing with comics when they're trying to. But what I've noticed is but comics and movies are relatively, and this is my personal opinion on why it's so divisive and such a cultural thing, is comics and movies are a relatively young art compared to literature, compared to the fine arts. And, people don't have a problem taking Citizen Kane and doing something different with it. People don't have a problem that, instead of making something else. Whereas people don't rewrite Tolkien because, as much as I love Tolkien, it's not the most diverse group of characters in the world. I do, and it is very, very Eurocentric, very, and But nobody's rewriting it. They just write additional stories with a diverse cast and with a, and with a, and that's why I don't think we have as much. We have our issues. I know we do, but I don't. That's why I don't think we have as much controversy because people just they don't worry about changing the old. They just present something new with modern sensibilities.
It might interest you. I'm just down the road from where Tolkien wrote part of Lord of the Rings. He was a lecturer at Leeds University and lived just down that way.
Oh
There's
wow!
a plaque on a building. I'm going to have to bow out in about 2 minutes because I've got to put my little boy to bed.
Well, hey,
Yes, it's
Morning.
right.
hey, tell everybody. Like I said, this is casual conversation, but do take a second to tell everybody about the bone ships and what you got going on. Aha! Oh, we got a TARDIS.
Oh well, classic TARDIS as well. That's my era TARDIS. Tom Baker's or maybe Pete
Thank you.
Davidson's. But that's my. But yeah, this is my latest book, The Bone Ships, which is Age of Sail fantasy set in a matriarchal world where disabled people or people who aren't physically perfect are second-class citizens, and it's a rip-roaring naval adventure that it is about broken people being fixed, and it's kind of, I always describe it as Hornblower meets versus Godzilla is possibly the best way of
Sounds
explaining
like
it.
that.
So it's more Patrick O'Brien because he's one of my big loves, but more people know who Hornblower is.
Oh,
And then
I
there's the assassin books, which are murder mysteries set in a fantasy world.
Well, hold them up so that they're closer to the camera. Let's see them.
Okay. Oh,
Go on. Oh, you might.
that's the Bone Ships,
Beautiful.
which
who did the
Robin
cover?
Hobb said was brilliant. So obviously
Yeah,
I'd never write anything ever again. Now that's me done.
Who did your cover?
It was Orbit arranged it for me, but I love this cover. I absolutely
Yeah,
I love it. But inside the map is done by show you the map, which is rather a beautiful thing.
Oh wow!
That is gorgeous.
It's done by my friend Tom Parker, who also did the. It's one of the loveliest things about having a small amount of success. Is he did these chapter headers as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, your stuff is really. I mean, everybody's heard of it, so I mean, you're on your way up. I mean, that's for sure. It's not like, yeah, I mean,
I've got Tom a lot of fantasy work through doing stuff with me, and he's a. If you look up Tom Parker's Facebook, he's a proper mad genius. He's just, his art is like nothing else you've ever seen. He does these fish hanging from hot air balloons, and it sounds mad, and it is, but they're genuinely beautiful.
oh wow.
And I'll send you a link
Yeah, do that.
to his stuff because he's really wonderful and lovely.
By the way, for the two of you, and if for those who are listening, if wanted, I just put a link to the BBC empty set collection for you to use on video calls, and it's called The Joy of Sets.
Oh my goodness.
They have things like this sets from Blake 7 and the sets from Coronation Street and so on. So you can go in and find things that are a lot of fun to add to your.
Doctor Who was was groundbreaking. They had the first female showrunner who ended up becoming like a legend in the BBC.
Yeah.
And
Mary Lambert was 26 years old when she did that.
whoa.
Yeah.
And I know she looked. I saw that documentary they did on the.
Right. Yes, I saw that too.
And they portrayed her as young, but I thought it was just
No,
there.
she was that
Was
young.
really that young? Holy shit! Oh my God! 26 years old, and
Brilliant.
can you imagine? I mean, like being a part of something like that, and then fast forwarding and real how much it's meant to people over the years. I mean, any kind of creation like Doctor Who or Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. How many writers, if they're not directly influenced by Lord of the Rings, are influenced by a writer who was directly influenced by the Lord of the Rings? I mean, modern fantasy owes so much to people like Tolkien, people like I don't remember her name, but the people who create all the people who created Doctor Who. I mean, my God, they were trailblazers in ways that you just don't see anymore.
You mean the showrunner, the producer?
Hmm.
Her name was Verity Lambert.
That's right. That's right. And now that you say
I,
that, I remember hearing it over Verity over and over again being said to her on the show.
I love Doctor Who, and one of the things I love most about it, especially the new series, is I watch it with my little boy, and whenever I see people complaining about things in it, the things that they don't like are nearly always the things that absolutely he loves. And
Well,
it just makes me think you're nailing it. You're absolutely getting Doctor Who right because he's the person it's aimed at. And he is just lost in it. Every episode, he absolutely loves it.
it was like
I am only sorry I couldn't have seen it when I was a child because I was exactly their market. I was 6 years old when it went on the air for the first time.
I remember I was terrified, still terrified of Daleks.
well, it's like Star Wars. You say your son likes stuff that you don't, and you like stuff your son does. And it reminds me of Star Wars fans. Okay, you have these guys my age, and I'm in my late 40s, and I'm approaching 50 years old. I was a little kid when Star Wars came out, and yeah, I think Jar Jar Binks is the most ridiculous character ever. But you know who likes Jar Jar Binks? Kids who were my age when they first saw Star Wars. I'm like, yeah, and I hear grown men my age like just going on tirades about Jar Jar Binks. I'm like, dude, he wasn't for you.
For you. For you.
Neither were the Ewoks. The Ewoks, adults didn't like Ewoks. Kids liked Ewoks.
It was exactly the right age for Ewok. I still love Ewoks. They're brilliant.
I mean, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, they have these insane people trying to look at things that are for kids and expecting adult eyes to like them, or expect these new the prequels to. It's just a movie. It's not a time machine. It's not going to take you back to when you were 8. And so,
I think when people are like criticizing the newest Star Wars films, I think a lot of the time what that is they want that feeling of being a kid when they first saw those films, and that is gone. That's tied to that certain media at that certain time, and you will not have that again. You want a new thing that you don't.
I so agree with you. When they released Star Wars, now called A New Hope, in the theaters, I only wish that I could be surprised again, as I was the first time when that ship came in overhead, because I ducked down in my seat.
Right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
When the thing appeared.
The 3 new Star Wars movies, there was the problems. It was like 3 movies that weren't connected to one another, and it's like they wrote them without the other movie in mind for some reason. They turned Ridley, what's her name? God, what was her last name?
Daisy Ridley.
Yeah, Daisy Ridley, who was a fine actress, but was a much better actress than the part she was given, than the part that was written for her, and it's really not helped her career. They gave her no character development. They gave her nothing. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I felt bad for the actress because if you look at the acting and just take away the story, whether or not you like the story, and look at the acting was good. I mean, she was doing.
Everyone blames her.
No,
I mean, anyone disparages her.
Fans can get ridiculous though, so they sit there and they won't watch anything with her in it now. And she's actually, from what I hear, no, I'm serious. What I hear is that she is having a hard time getting more work because of her role as Rey. And I'm like, why? She's a really good actress, you know what I mean? Just because she got
producers have a tendency to see you in your last role. William Shatner spent 2 years sleeping in his car because of Star Trek.
Oh my God!
I think I'm kidding.
I still want to meet Shatner. I know. And Star Trek, the original, was before my time, but when I was watching it, I was so damn young. I didn't understand the concept of reruns. I thought it was happening then.
I did that.
I actually understood the concept because of Andy Griffith's show. I was watching it on one. I was watching it in black and white on one channel, and I turned the channel. It was in color on the another, and it was the same damn show. And I'm like, and I made the connection. See, I wasn't entirely stupid, just mostly stupid. Kind of like mostly harmless, but just mostly.
I loved Star Trek Discovery though. I adored Star Trek Discovery. I thought it was a wonderful thing, and
I never saw it.
clever. It was really, because it took its time to sort of reveal what it was doing, and then I think it's a series about how the Federation becomes the Federation, and the choices that are made of what you want to be, and I love that kind of.
I never saw it. I've heard it was awful, and I've heard it was brilliant. You know what I mean? So I'm like, and at the time, I think you can only watch it on CBS or All Access or something like that. So it's like I didn't have that, so I didn't, and I wasn't.
I don't know if it's on YouTube or not, but it has one of the best space battles I've ever seen. In that it's not like a naval battle. It's not ships coming at each other like that. It's literally, you don't know where the enemy are. It's a 4D battle. It's in all spaces, and suddenly ships fits and vanish, and you just think, my God, that must be utterly terrifying. And I never want to be involved in
the things they can do.
And that's when violence works. When you think, no, I don't want to think, and it's not cool. It's a really good thing.
Jody, do you have one of your books that has one of those covers I love so much right there with you?
Are you talking to me, Brian?
I am. Do you have Jody has some of her books have the greatest covers you've ever seen.
Well, I'm unfortunately nowhere near my collection.
Don't worry about it then. I swear to God, I'm sitting there we're at Con, and I'm just fawning over them. I just can't stop looking at them. I'm standing right here and I'm just looking over at her covers. You know, it is that some of the art. My God, the art was just amazing, and it's so detailed.
Be lucky. I have been very fortunate in my artists. They've been spectacular.
But anyway, we are rolling down to being here an hour, and so
my little boy's had a quarter of an hour extra staying up, so I'll be very pleased with you.
I just want to say I've had a wonderful time talking to everybody, and this is exactly why I wanted to do this this way, where it's just a conversation, and you know what I mean, where everybody's just free to talk about whatever. You know what I mean?
Nice to meet you, RJ. So I hope we can
meet you, Jody. Yeah.
Yes.
Hope we can meet in real life when all this is over.
Oh yeah, well, I mean,
somewhere.
Yeah.
I may need to get to the US at some point, I think.
Well, I mean, you got to come to the U.S. I mean, you're going to be your books are just going to get bigger, so the fans will demand it.
Well, I want to go to the South because my favorite authors are James Lee Burke, the crime author.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't think it to look at me, but I really like country music. So I do. I like. There's a lot of dark country that comes out of Denver, so I'd like to come down to that sort of area to kind of hear some of those bands live. And
well, come to Dragon Con when it can be operated again, because it's known as Mardi Gras for nerds. 80,000 people with many interests and 57
hotels worth of con is amazing. Yeah, I was actually going to be an attending professional this year for the first time, and of course it got canceled. And so they contacted me. I just did a video, like a fan love letter video. They asked her, "Did you do one?" Oh yeah, you're doing workshops. I saw that online.
Yes, I am. I'm doing my writer's workshop all the same.
I'm going to run. Jody.
Hey, it was really
lovely
nice talking to you. Hey, you take care.
Thanks for
Bye.
Hey, if you're ever in the South, you let me know. You can come hang out at my house. It's a lot of fun. It looks nothing like what you see behind me.
Is that a lie? I'm really very disappointed.
No.
It's a proper house.
Thanks again, Brian.
Bye.
Oh, bye. And Jody, it was so cool of you to come on and do all this. And I wish Michael would have been here too. I don't know what happened to him. I guess he got caught up, but that's all right. I'll get him on here later. Anyway, I'm
Well,
so I'm so pleased you came, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. I'm hoping we're going to do get back in the Barge Tower once all this stuff. I mean, it's gotta
well,
eventually everybody will get it, right? And we want to. Actually, they're saying about 70% of people will end up having COVID.
I think we've already had it. The trouble is they think you can get it again, and it's already done some damage.
Yeah. Well, I'm at high risk right now because of all the health stuff, but I'm losing weight, so that's helping me if I were to get it, not be in as much danger. But I guess
Okay.
we'll just all have to see. But anyway,
Well, stay well.
thank you so much for being here,
Yeah.
Jody Lynn
Thank
Nye.
you.
What do you got coming up? Tell everybody what you got coming up.
Mostly the things that I'm working on. I'm working on a book with Eric Flint for the 1632 universe, working on the next Myth Adventure story. I have a lot of short stories that I've committed to my husband's great frustration because he thinks I should be doing more books, and he's right. But I can't resist when someone comes to me with a good idea. So right now, I'm just trying to fulfill obligations. So you take care. I've got to run now too, but thank you very much for setting all this up.
All right.
Stay well.
We'll see how you well. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye. And I am going to say goodbye to all of you. I appreciate everybody watching and hope to see you again soon. Next week, we have Alex White and David Dalglish coming on, and still haven't filled the third spot yet. But we're going to see. Maybe we might just do it with Alex and David. They know each other, and they're super, super cool guys. Anyway, we'll see you again soon.